Turning point, USA's Chief Operating Officer Tyler Bauer, he confirmed just how many death threats the group has faced. And, this chilling video has resurfaced. Charlie Kirk, the late Charlie Kirk, man, I really hate saying that. This video has resurfaced, and he talked about his greatest fear. And he said one of his greatest fears was that a member of Congress or somebody, on the right was going to get assassinated. And he was speaking to, of all people, Senator Mike Lee of Utah at the time. And I mean, this is almost too unbelievable that this video resurfaced and that Charlie Kirk I don't know if he prophesied, if he saw a vision of somebody dying. But he was the only conservative pundit that I know that said that we have this assassination culture growing in America amongst the left wing. And I'll talk about that here this morning. TPUSA confirmed an insane number of death threats after this chilling video, thousands upon thousands of death threats that Charlie Kirk and the TPUSA team had received. And this chilling video resurfaced, and that's what sparked them to release the amount of death threats that they actually got. They're actually coming up with a database, which is fascinating to me, and I absolutely am here for it, where you can kind of search up. So they're creating a database of people who have said nasty things about Charlie Kirk after his death, and you can look up people by their name and their employer. And this is a way of saying, hey, I don't want to hire this person. If you suspect, you're a business owner and you suspect that this person is a liberal, you can actually look up. They're working on this right now as we speak, TPUSA, a database. You can look up their name in the database and see what they said about Charlie Kirk online. And they're compiling all this data. And I am all here for it. Accountability culture. That's what this is. We are going to be talking about the accountability cancel culture thing today a little bit, because Barack Obama is out there and all of his hypocrisy, talking about how it's cancel culture with Jimmy Kimmel. They said the same thing about Stephen Colbert. We're going to address it. It's not cancel culture. Okay. We are fighting back. We are pushing back. And as long as the government stays out of it, Pam Bondi coming up with hate speech legislation, I don't want to see that happen. As long as the government stays out of it and they don't actually craft legislation surrounding so-called hate speech, private citizens can do what they want. This is free speech. Okay. TPUSA creating a database where you can search up these libs and make sure that you don't hire them. This is all free speech. And it's exciting that we're finally pushing back and that the right is not going to be taking this lying down. So we are at a tipping point. We are going to be talking about the chaos that erupted. Rashida Tlaib, she made some very dangerous comments on Capitol Hill about Republicans. They still haven't learned their lesson, so we're going to get to that. Plus, I'm going to get to this Rockford, Illinois fence. It's a courthouse fence. And Eric Swanson and Tammy Duckworth and Dick Durbin, they've been making a mountain out of a molehill, really, with this. Really, this is just common sense protection. That is why the fence probably went up. Common sense protection, making sure that people can go to the courthouse safely. Because let's face it, these liberals have gotten insane. The liberal meltdown over ICE and everything like that. They've been protesting courthouses, immigration detention centers. And this is just preventative maintenance. It's preventative. It's a precautionary measure, right? To put up this fencing to make sure that the people inside the courthouse are safe from the liberal meltdown. So we're going to address that. But first, let's talk about the death threats that the TPUSA group has faced, because they've faced thousands upon thousands of death threats, according to Bauer, the chief operating officer. Congratulations, Erica Kirk. She is the new CEO. The late Charlie Kirk, hate saying that. He's the founder of TPUSA. He had expressed to several top people at TPUSA that in the event, that he was no longer able to be CEO, expressed to several people that he'd want his wife, Erica. And I feel bad for the leftists, because Erica, according to Charlie Kirk, is far more conservative than he was. Charlie Kirk was a moderate. If they're willing to do this to a moderate, what are they willing to do to you? I know that people who listen to this show are slightly more right than maybe Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk was a moderate. If they're willing to do this to a nice, moderate guy, what are they willing to do to you, who might be a little bit further right-leaning than a Charlie Kirk? Okay, so Bauer, he responded to this throwback video, and this was of Charlie Kirk. He was sitting in his chair, and he was talking about the fear of what would happen, God forbid, if someone on the right got shot or even killed. Charlie Kirk brought up assassination culture and how it was really gaining some traction amongst the left, and how, Donald Trump assassinated, was attempted his life twice, literally turned his head in the nick of time. And then the other one, had it been, a few moments earlier, that Trump had gone out, the assassin's bullet would have snagged him. Okay, so that's Ryan Routh, I think was his name, the second assassin. Let me double check on that guy's name. I know it was, Ryan Wesley Routh. So Trump was within minutes of being dead at that assassination attempt. And then, we know the Thomas Crooks, the bullet just barely grazed past his head. That, and then we've got Luigi Mangione, assassinating the United Healthcare CEO. It is becoming eerie at this point, the assassination culture and how it's on the rise, the political violence. So unbelievable that Charlie Kirk uttered these words. And behind him, you'll see he was talking with a senator, and he was talking with Senator Mike Lee from Utah, of all people. So take a listen to this throwback video. Here we go.
My fear, Senator, and I hope I'm wrong, and let's stay in prayer that I'm wrong, that someone is going to get shot the same way that Steve Scalise got shot, and God forbid, killed. The left is creating a pressure cooker with so many of their rank and file paramilitary troops that very well might result in one of us getting shot or killed. God forbid that happens. We're getting death threats every single day here on the Charlie Kirk Show. My fear, Senator, and I hope I'm wrong. And
wow, that is really. I just can't believe. I'm borderline going to say that. I think that he might have had some sort of vision. I don't know, obviously, because I'm not Charlie Kirk. I didn't. Wasn't a friend or anything like that. But did he know? Did he have a vision or a dream? So he says this, quote, "My fear, Senator Lee from Utah, and I hope I'm wrong, and let's stay in prayer that I'm wrong, that someone is going to get shot in the same way Steve Scalise got shot, God forbid. The left is creating a pressure cooker with so many in their ranks, or their rank and file paramilitary troops, that very well might result in one of us getting shot or killed. God forbid that happens. We're getting death threats every single day here on the Charlie Kirk Show." So Bauer not only reshared this, the chief operating officer at TPUSA confirming that this video is real, but he did respond to the amount of death threats that they actually have received over the years. And he says, "We received thousands upon thousands of death threats." That's what he said. And Charlie Kirk never complained. He never lived in fear. He said, if they're not trying to run you out of town, maybe you're not doing enough for Christ, right? Maybe you're not doing enough getting up out of your chair and, telling people about Jesus, telling people the truth. But Charlie never complained about this, never lived in fear. He said, quote, this is what Bauer said, "Our security detail working with authorities has thwarted dozens of serious threats, but he would never give up. Charlie Kirk would never give up. He stared evil in the eye, and he tried to win them over." So I don't know if he had some sort of vision or prophecy, like what he saw, I don't know if he saw that somebody had tried to kill him, maybe in a dream, I don't know. Or maybe he was just somebody who was very cued in and clued in to the culture and the times that we're in. He knew how dangerous it was to be out on these college campuses. I've told you how dangerous it is to be on these college campuses. I have a friend, he got hip tossed by a professor. He got escorted out of the Bone Student Center at Illinois State University by 2 police officers for simply going up to a candidate, a Bloomington City Council candidate, John Dannenberger. He went up to him while he was on the campaign trail tabling at this student center, in which Kevin, paid tuition, pays taxes. This is a public university. He went up to go ask him a question. He was escorted very quickly off the premises by 2 police officers. I know how dangerous it is on these campuses. When I went to go see Charlie Kirk and interviewed some folks there at the Charlie Kirk event 5 months ago, I knew that the professors, instead of everybody there was pretty much moderate, right? At the Charlie Kirk event 5 months ago at Illinois State University. Everybody was excited to see Charlie Kirk, even if they were libbies, right? They were still pumped up to see Charlie Kirk, and they wanted to hear everything that he was saying. And they were gathered around him real close by the tent there. There was this fringe group outside of the main group, outside of the main event. And they were dressed in all kinds of crazy garb, and like some of them barely dressed, right? And the professors, I was shocked. I saw 2-3 professors join in. Now, I didn't see any professors amongst the moderate crowd. Okay. Now, this was a huge crowd, so maybe there was a professor or 2. But I saw 2-3 professors in the crowd of the fringe. And you would think, being an adult, right? These college students are adults, but being the authority on campus, or having authority on campus as a faculty member, as a professor, you'd think that they would disrupt or interrupt this fringy left-wing counter protest to Charlie Kirk's appearance, right? You would think that they'd say, hey, students, he's here, freedom of speech, he's in here engaging with students. Why don't you go up there and engage with him, rather than be back here menacing the other attendees, the Charlie Kirk rally attendees? Why are you menacing them with blowhorns, putting posters in their faces, screaming absolute utter nonsense? Why don't you go and participate and engage in free speech and debate, and respectful debate? Why do you have to be back here? No, the professors condoned it. Not only condoned it, they applauded it and uplifted that sort of behavior at the Charlie Kirk event on ISU's campus. So when I say these campuses are dangerous, they're very dangerous. I have the receipts. I had a professor at the time, and I always wrote very left-wing, right? Because I thought that, and there's pictures of me back in 2016 when I was in high school. I wasn't able to vote for Trump the first time. But back when I was in high school, I would run around with a MAGA hat on in high school. And I got a lot of grief for that during high school. But when I got into college, I pushed a lot of my true beliefs down, my religion, everything. And in fact, I even had a cross that I'd wear around my neck. And somebody told me, one of my, fellow colleagues at an internship, they said, you should probably take the cross off around your neck when you're on camera, because you don't want to, disrespect other religions when you're anchoring the news, or when you're, I was doing an internship. And these are not places where you can be yourself. So I was kind of forced into this corner where I would write very left-wing articles and pieces and essays. And there was a prompt that was given to us. I remember very faintly what the prompt was about. It was about treason and sedition laws. And he wanted us to write about January 6th, the professor. And I wrote about it. And he goes, oh, this is great work. He goes, but I think that you need to go further and think about what people were charged, or how they were, what their sentencing was for treason. And essentially in the paper, the way he graded my paper, he said that I should have called for not only Trump being a traitor, but I should call for his execution. And that is what he wanted me to write in this essay. Okay. He goes, yeah, take it a step further. You've called Trump a traitor. That's great. What I want you to do is take it a step further and call for his execution as a traitor. Like, that is literally what a professor wrote on my paper. I have the receipts. So these college campuses are very dangerous, and they just spread lies and feed these lies to the students. Charlie would have them for 3 hours and would change their minds. Okay, that's why these college campuses, faculty, professors, they didn't want him on campus, because they've spent 4 years with these students trying to get them to believe these lies. And Charlie, within a few hours, could get them to totally change their worldview. So Charlie, I think, was keenly aware of what his fate could be, if not totally aware. I don't know if he received some sort of vision, and maybe he just dismissed it as a dream. But maybe he received a vision that he was going to be. I don't know. But this was really eerie, this video. I mean, come on. He straight up says, I'm afraid one of us is going to get shot. We get death threats here at the Charlie Kirk Show all the time. And he posted this. He was actually warning about something called assassination culture. And this was a tweet on April 7th. Okay. This was probably right before he came to ISU's campus. So here it is. I'm going to share the tweet with you, so that way you can read along. Assassination culture is spreading on the left. 48% of liberals say it would be at least somewhat justified to murder Elon Musk. 58% said the same about Donald Trump. In California, activists are naming ballot measures after Luigi Mangione. The left is being whipped into a violent frenzy. Any setback, whether losing an election, losing a court case, justifies a maximally violent response. So this is the natural outgrowth of left-wing protest culture, tolerating violence and mayhem for years on end. The cowardice of local prosecutors and school officials have turned the left into a ticking time bomb. Then he shares some data here about the left. 48% of all respondents said murdering Elon Musk would be all right. Here's Elon Musk, 48%. Left of center said yes. All respondents said 31%. I mean, this is insane. Percent of people who said destroying Tesla dealerships is partially acceptable. 57% of those left of center said that would be okay. Destroying Teslas. So this is heartbreaking. How true all of these warnings from Charlie Kirk have become. I do want to get to the utter chaos that unfolded on Capitol Hill with Rashida Tlaib. Sorry. She again called Republicans fascists. J.B. Pritzker has not toned down his rhetoric at all. Rashida Tlaib has not toned down the temperature with their rhetoric at all. J.B. Pritzker actually was quickly fact-checked when he claimed to have never called Republicans fascists. He was very, very quickly fact-checked on that. Representative Byron Donalds hit back on Rashida Tlaib here on Capitol Hill because he, like so many of us following the Kirk assassination, we are over it. Okay. We are over this hateful, godless leftist ideology, and we have had it. So this is during a House Oversight Committee hearing. And this was on Wednesday, and they were discussing President Donald Trump's federalization of law enforcement, local law enforcement. And after her time was well over, she continued to go on and speak over Byron Donalds. And she continued to go on about how this would be Trump's fascist takeover. Trump, via the Insurrection Act, can federalize law enforcement there in Chicago. Look up the Insurrection Act. He can totally do it. It's totally constitutional. It is not fascist or authoritarian in any kind of way. She says that this is a fascist takeover, him trying to take over Chicago or some of these left-wing cities, inner cities, in order to get the violence under control. Let's take a listen. Here we go.
Regards to it. But I think it's important, Mr. Chair, just like in DC, home rule was one out of Black freedom struggle in the fight for civil rights. We can't be passive right now. So nobody over there should take anything we say serious, like so personally as if we're attacking them. No, we're attacking a process, not attacking people here. And I think it's really important. We need to stand up against this fascist takeover. That's not a bad word. It's a fact. And here in DC and across the country, it is so incredibly important, Mr. Chair, that this committee does not allow rhetoric that defames and or paints Washington D.C. in a way that you all haven't really truly seen. You're just reading it. No, you're just reading it or something off of some.
Will the gentlelady yield to a question?
Yeah, I think it's really important.
Will the gentlelady yield?
I don't yield. I don't even have time. I can tell you
your time's expired.
It is expired,
Mr.
but
Tlaib,
Mr. Chair, but you all live
like
here,
Mr.
and
Tlaib.
you're not telling people the beautiful parts that you do see in our
Mr.
nation's
Tlaib.
capital. And no, it's just wrong how we're
Oh,
doing.
Chairman, I think it's
Wrong.
insane that the
But you're
gentlelady
gonna
doesn't
look
have
at
an
the
argument, but she's going to
Washington,
refer
D.C.
to
as a
me
bunch
and some of
of
my
criminals. You yield to
colleagues.
Mr.
Chair,
Donald.
We were
you
from the
know
Third
this.
Reich. This is
You're going to
insane.
look at
It's
14,
insane.
15-year-olds as
It's
a bunch of
insane.
criminals?
It's insane.
Oh,
Do I look like a
please.
member of the Third Reich to you, Miss
Please,
Tlaib?
please,
Is that what I look like
please.
to you?
You're the one taking your voting
Is that what
card,
you think?
giving it
Is
to
that what you
somebody,
think?
committing
Is that
a
what you
crime.
think?
No, that's unethical.
I think it's radical and I think
should-
it's
no,
insane.
you
And
should
I'll
be held
respect everything that you say.
accountable. Before you
But to
open your
say
mouth,
something like
you
that
should be
to
held
myself and a lot of my colleagues is way out of line.
I'm not the
It's
one
way out of
giving
line.
my voting
It's
card
way out of
to
line.
someone
Regular
to
order,
go
Mr.
vote.
Way out of
You
line.
go in a
All
vote.
right.
Regular order.
That's okay. But it's okay, right?
That is not how it
It's
goes.
okay, right?
You hold yourself accountable before you talk about
Hold
Washington,
myself
D.C.
accountable.
Mr. Tlaib.
Washington,
Hold
D.C.
your
out
own
of your
self
mouth.
accountable. How
Keep
about
it out of
that?
your mouth.
Hold your own
I'm
self
trying,
accountable.
Mr.
How about that?
Tlaib.
Free D.C. and make sure you
All right.
vote with your own voting card. Don't be giving it to somebody
Mr.
else.
Tlaib. All right, time. Chair recognizes.
Wow. That was insane. Through the Insurrection Act. Now, Donald Trump did something different in DC. He didn't use the Insurrection Act, but he used the fact that, hey, Washington, D.C., it's under federal jurisdiction. Okay. So totally constitutional. Okay. He's all within his rights and powers. He's not overstepping. And she says, we need to take a stand against fascist takeover. And that's not a bad word, in fact, says Rashida Tlaib. And, she was attacking really Byron Donalds here at one point. And no matter how civil, like in the beginning there, you saw how civil Byron Donalds started. He started asking, Rashida Tlaib if she would yield to a question. And, her time was expired. She acknowledged that her time was expired. And she wouldn't even allow the next person to speak. So he just says, will you yield? Although her time was up, Byron was trying to be as civil as possible, as respectful as possible. And he didn't have to be because her time was up. I would have cut in and I would have said, I probably would have used some colorful language. And I would have said, ma'am, your time is up. Let me speak. And I would have been disrespectful right off the bat. Byron, he really started to out as respectful there. He goes, would you yield to a question? And she just kept talking. And she goes, no, I don't yield. And finally, Congressman just had enough. And she goes, Chairman, I think it's wrong that she's going to refer to me and some of my colleagues. This is what Byron says. I think it's wrong that she's going to refer to some of me and my colleagues that were from the Third Reich. The Third Reich was the time period in which Nazi Germany. That's what Byron had said. Donald's responded to her outburst there and to her being over her time is saying, hey, she's referring to me and some of my colleagues as being a part of the Third Reich this time period. And he goes, this is insane. And he goes, do I look like a member of the Third Reich to you? Byron Donalds is Black. He added, and he has started raising his voice. Okay. And this is a perfect example of what I mean, we are at a boiling point. Okay, we've been in a pressure cooker, and we've been very kind up to this point. This was their last chance. Charlie Kirk getting shot was their last chance to come out and say, man, we really need to turn this down. We are sorry, but no, tens of thousands, if not millions, of left-wing Americans celebrated the death of Charlie Kirk and said nasty things. They're selling dolls of Charlie Kirk now with blood coming out of his neck. Truly disturbing. And this was their last chance. We've woke the F up, to quote Greg Gutfeld. We are awake. And, is that what I look like to you? Am I a member of the Third Reich? Do I look like a member of the Third Reich? Is that what you think? She did. I don't know if you caught it. She did respond no. But Donald came back with, I think it's radical and I think it's insane. And I'll respect everything you say. But you say something like that me and my colleagues are members of the Third Reich. That is way out of line. That's what he says. And, the crazy part was that she was out of time the entire time. Like, she had no reason to be talking. She should have shut up as soon as she was out of time. But she just kept screaming at him. And she would not stop. And in the beginning, he was so respectful. He goes, would you yield for a question? I mean, that is the most civil, respectful response to somebody who's gone way over their time, calling you a fascist, calling you a member of the Third Reich. I mean, Tlaib kept screaming at him and telling him to hold himself accountable. Hold myself accountable. Excuse me, Miss Rashida Tlaib. Hold yourself accountable. You are well over your time. They've got little timers. They can see when they're out of time. Hold yourself accountable. And the reason why I bring this up is that this is not the only chaotic moment that we've seen this week. And like I said, we're at a tipping point. Okay. So I want to get to this one. That was on Wednesday. This one was on Tuesday. No, that one was yesterday. This one was on Wednesday. This has all happened this week. Fireworks have just gone off. Like boom, 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 boom. This one is of Eric Swalwell. Now let me set this up. This was not the only chaotic moment. Rashida Tlaib and Byron Donalds. There was another one between California Representative Eric Swalwell, the macho man wannabe. Okay, the guy who, pumps iron. Can't do, I forget how many bench presses he did, but not nearly as many as RFK Jr., who's got at least, I don't know, I'd say 40 years on him, maybe, I don't know, 30 years. So Eric Swalwell, the macho man wannabe, he posts videos to social media that are just so cringe that you would have to have like a bag next to you to throw up in, those airline bags, in the front seat pocket, in case you feel nauseous. Yeah. I feel like that every single time I scroll and I'm like, there's Eric Swalwell. And I'm like, do I really want to click on this video and listen to what he's got to say? Let me get my nausea bag. My airline bag to throw up in. So there were fireworks on Tuesday and Wednesday. These were separate hearings with FBI Director Kash Patel. And this one was notable because when it was Eric's turn, he ripped into Kash Patel. And once it came back to Kash Patel, he let Eric have it during this House Judiciary Committee profanity alert. If there's kids watching, there is some profanity used here.
20 of those individuals have been investigated or have had adverse actions. Director, considering that you have identified these people as, quote, government gangsters, will you recuse yourself from making any investigation decisions about these individuals?
Anyone that has been terminated at the FBI has been done.
No, the question again.
Failed to meet the muster in their constitutional obligation.
I will work on the audio-visual capabilities.
I'm going to borrow your terminology and call bullshit on your entire career in Congress.
I'm reclaiming my time,
It's been a disgrace to the American
Director,
people.
I'm reclaiming my time.
You can reclaim your time all you want.
Mr. Chairman, you're going to allow a witness to speak this way? Mr. Chairman, would you
recuse yourself, Director?
The gentleman has no time.
Mr. Chairman, would you admonish the witness not to insult members?
Gentlemen,
20 of those individuals have been investigated or have had.
Yep. Okay, so Swalwell there And you might have thought that Kash Patel, like, he used his profanity and he really, let Eric Swalwell have it. And you're like, whoa, Kash Patel was kind of out of line there. No. Swalwell asked Patel a question and then immediately interrupted him when he was trying to answer. That is what happened there. Anyone who watches these hearings knows that it's incredibly tiresome to watch bullies like Eric Swalwell and Adam Schiff and Rashida Tlaib. They refuse to let witnesses talk, and instead they just talk over them and yell at them and say that they're not experts enough, or they're unqualified. And that's what happened here. The Democrats grilled Kash Patel, and they didn't even really use an argument against Kash Patel. They just, went after him and said that he wasn't fit to run the FBI. So much for turning down the temperature. They'll get on these news programs and they'll say, well, you have to turn down the temperature. The political violence is coming from both sides. I don't care what your political views are. This shouldn't have happened to Charlie Kirk. They'll get out there and say all this fluffy crap out on the news channels, with their cable news TV hosts. And their broadcasters from ABC, NBC. Turn down the temperature, in wake of the Kirk assassination. Yeah, so much for that. Because here's Senator Cory Booker. I want to play another clip. And like I said, they weren't truly asking questions that mattered. They literally just used their time to go after Kash Patel and to slander him, really. And Cory Booker hit a new level of insanity here. Okay, this wasn't legitimate questioning. What they just wanted to do was go after Kash Patel and his, him personally. They went to personal attacks. And my gosh, this was a performative piece of nonsense. Okay, check out the wild eyes on Cory Booker here. He thinks that he's tough here, screaming at Kash Patel. Really, man? It just makes you look crazy. All of these Democrats are starting to look crazier and crazier to me. Take a look.
Mr. Patel, in just 8 months, you have assaulted the institutional integrity of the FBI. But I know FBI field agents. I've worked with them in Newark. No matter how truly bad you are, you can't undermine the legacy of agents who fight every day to keep us safe, but you can tarnish the integrity of the agency and undermine the agency's capacity. I believe you're failing as a leader, and that your failure does have serious implications for the safety and security of Americans and our families. We're more vulnerable to domestic and foreign attack because of your failures of leadership. I don't think you're fit to hand the bureau, but here's the thing, Mr. Patel. I think you're not going to be around long. I think this might be your last oversight hearing. Because as much as you supplicate yourself to the will of Donald Trump and not the Constitution of the United States of America, Donald Trump has shown us in his first term and in this term, he is not loyal to people like you. He will cut you loose. This may be the last time I have a hearing with you because I don't think you're long for your job. But I'm going to tell you this. I pray for you. I pray for you that you can step up and defend your oath, defend the Constitution, and do a much better job of defending this country. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do you want to say anything?
Yes, sir. That rant of false information does not bring this country together. If you want to work on bringing this country, it's my time, not yours.
My God.
If you want to talk about
dividing this country,
it is my
I follow
time.
you on your social media posts that
It is
tear
my
this country
time
apart.
to
There
address
should be a
your
unifying-
falsehoods.
Oh,
You are an
you can
embarrassment
try all
to the
you
division
want
in this
to
country.
not
Senator,
take
it is
responsibility
my time.
for what
You
you
had
have
your
said.
time.
Sir, you're
Your
making a
time is
mockery of this
over.
committee. Sir, you don't tell me my time is over.
You
The
know how
people
far
of New
we've
Jersey
come
tell me
since
what my
you
time
tell-
is.
Senator,
You can't lecture me.
You can tell me
Sir,
my time's over?
You may be the charge of the
I'm not
FBI,
going anywhere.
but I am not afraid of you. sir.
Mr. Chairman,
Not afraid of you.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Senator Booker, I announced at the beginning of this meeting that this back and forth talking over each other doesn't work. And I said, if that happened, I asked Patel not to respond, and I was going to give him some time after the senator's time was up to respond. And he has the privilege to do that uninterrupted.
Mr.
So
Chairman,
go-
one point of
Go
order.
ahead, Mr.
I've
Patel.
watched him talk over us, and you've never once criticized him for us not even being able to get our questions out.
Well,
He has been rude and disrespectful to senator after senator.
and when the senators were not giving him a chance to answer, I didn't stop the senator either. Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If the FBI, under my 7-month leadership, were failing this administration in this country, why do we have 23,000 violent felons arrested this year alone? A 200, a double increase from that time last year. Why is it that we have seized 6,000 weapons? Why have we found 1,500 child predators and arrested them? Why have we 300 human traffickers in jail? Why have we found and identified 4,700 children? Why have we seized 1,600 kilograms of fentanyl in enough to kill a third of the American public, a 25% increase alone from last year, 88,000 kilograms of cocaine seized, 7,000 kilograms of meth seized, and that's just on our criminal operations in summer heat. How is it possible that we're taking 8 kilograms off the streets of the cities in New Jersey and preventing the deaths of 607,000 people this year alone, a failure of the FBI and my leadership? How is it that we have counterintelligence arrests already this year exceeding the numbers from the entirety of last year? 33% increase in PRC, 83% in Russia, 60% in the CI space as it relates to Iran, and we haven't even talked about CT, the southern border, the northern border.
Beautiful. So Cash Patel ripped into Cory Booker, saying, hey, you went on a rant of false information there. And that is not bringing the country together. And before he could get anything more out, Cory Booker, he truly lost it and started interrupting Patel's time when he was talking about this false information that Cory Booker had, ranted about and was spewing out. And he started shouting, my God, my God, my God. And Patel cut him short saying, hey, this is my time now. Okay. And he wanted to address the Cory Booker falsehood, saying that he wasn't cut out to run the FBI. And he nuked, Cory Booker as an embarrassment, as, of course, Cory Booker continued to yell. Grassley had to kind of step in, and Chuck Grassley had to step in and scold Booker and say that, hey, you were already warned about doing that, interrupting. And not letting a witness speak when you ask questions of them. And Patel, he really shot back here because he used facts. And he said, look, if the FBI was failing, I've done so much more than the Biden FBI. Look at all these violent criminals, felons that I've caught. Look at the increase in seizing fentanyl that I've done. We've had an increase compared to Biden in the past year. And he lays out the numbers: 23,000 violent felons arrested this year alone, 6,000 weapons seized, 1,500 child predators arrested, 300 traffickers jailed, 4,700 children found, and 1,600 kilograms of fentanyl seized. I mean, I bring this all up this morning. The exchange between Eric Swalwell and Cash Patel, the exchange between Cory Booker and Cash Patel, the exchange between Rashida Tlaib and Byron Donalds. I bring all these blowups up because these all happened within the last 3 days. There is a tipping point going on. There is something going on here. And I have to wonder, and I'm sure you're wondering, are we reaching a tipping point for Democrats? Republicans have had it. They've gone along to get along for way too long. And I think we need some screaming. I think we need some profanity in these hearings. Donalds, he took to Twitter and he reemphasized the point with his tweet saying this, following that dust-up he had with Rashida Tlaib. He says, it's been 8 days after a leftist assassin shot my friend Charlie Kirk. Now Rashida Tlaib is calling us fascist again. The rhetoric is wrong. The rhetoric is unhinged. It's out of line. And the rhetoric has inspired murder. We will not stand to be defamed. Yeah, they have no idea what fascism is. Okay. They don't know the definition. And to be honest with you, I bring this up all the time. In the 1800s, if you were to defame somebody's character like this and call them a fascist, And I get it, free speech. I'm tired with all of that. Like, you are not entitled to call people fascist anymore. You're not entitled to call President Donald Trump a rapist or a pedophile. Now, those are actual legal terms, and Donald Trump has never been convicted of those things. If you were to do that back then in the 1800s, you would be dead. Okay, you'd be challenged to a duel if you defame somebody's character in the way that they have with Republicans, calling them fascists and not providing evidence for that. You would be dead. You'd be challenged to a duel and you'd be dead. I want to get to Gutfield's response, and it's so important because it's emblematic of the appropriate level of frustration and disdain conservatives need to be countering the left with on this assassination. Okay, so we need to have the same vitriol, the same hostility that Greg Gutfeld expresses here. So let's see. I'm going to play it. Here we go. This is, I gotta pull this one up. Sorry, guys. I will get to Brandon Johnson because he, like Rashida Tlaib, continues to say that Donald Trump is the one who's espousing dangerous rhetoric or whatever. I'll get to Brandon Johnson here, the mayor of Chicago, here in just a second. But take a listen to Greg Gutfeld. This is emblematic of what the right should be doing when it comes to countering the left with this assassination. Here we go.
We don't need it. What is interesting here is why is only this happening on the left and not the right? That's all we need to know. There's absolutely no cognitive.
What about Melissa Hortman that we just talked
you want to talk about Melissa Hortman? Did you know her name before it happened? None of us did. None of us were spending every single day talking about Mrs. Hortman. I never heard of her until after she died.
Doesn't matter?
Don't play that bullshit with me. You know what I'm saying is there was no demonization, amplification about that woman before she died. It was a specific crime against her by somebody who knew her. The same. Now you could bring up Josh Shapiro, but then you will not bring up, for example, that was a pro-Palestine person. So don't use your what about this? The fact of the matter is the both sides argument not only doesn't fly, we don't care. We don't care about your both sides argument. That shit is dead. For one thing, there is no cognitive dissonance on our side. On your side, your beliefs do not match reality. So you're coming up with these rationalizations like, what about this? Or what about that? We're not doing that because we saw it happen. We saw a young, bright man assassinated, and we know who did it. We are not coming up with rationalizations. We are calm, we are honest, and we are resolute. We're not defensive, and I understand the defensiveness. I understand why people are saying, what about this and what about this? Because if you have to face the underlying fact to this, your life is going to fall apart because you're going to realize you're not the good guys. If you sat around and you defended the mutilation of children, you're not the good guys. If you sat 600, 700 cases of harassment against Republicans and you said, but what about this? What about this? And then you see this murder after calling somebody a fascist, you realize maybe I'm not the good guy. That is a hell of a realization to deal with. So therefore, you have to grasp at rationalizations. You don't have to do that, Jessica. They do. I don't believe you're part of that group, but why the hell do you have to mimic and echo that crap to us?
All right. I wanted to play that, a little bit of that. That was Fox News' Greg Gutfeld. He tried to warn Democrats and members of the legacy media and those on the left like Rashida Tlaib. He tried to warn them earlier this week that, hey, conservatives are done. Following the Kirk murder, we're done with the violent rhetoric that they've spewed for a decade now. I would say even longer than that, since Ronald Reagan, really. They've been calling Republican presidents and presidential candidates Hitler. Look it up. They've been labeling Trump and his supporters Nazis and fascists. So this is the appropriate level of frustration conservatives need to have when countering the left on the assassination. And yes, the shooter was motivated by left-wing propaganda. It's very clear the messages on the bullet casings, the mounting information being obtained by authorities at this point. Now, I'm not going to go down any conspiracies, because really today's show is about the response from the left following the assassination. Today's show is not about the conspiracy theories of who actually pulled the trigger. Tyler Robinson, I mean, the evidence is damning. Those text messages are odd. I will give that to, some of you had reached out and said, don't these text messages sort of read like a script? It's weird that he was talking about changing his clothing in the bushes, and he referred to his clothes as clothing. Nobody really does that. They say, I changed my clothes. They don't say, I changed my clothing. Or in the text message, I noticed they said, Tyler Robinson had said something like, I had to get to my vehicle. No, people usually, when they're texting, they say, like, my car, right? Nobody really talks like clothing and vehicle. And it kind of read script-like, and I get that. And not to mention the text messages, it was almost narrating all of the stuff that we were asking questions about. And then the FBI released the text message thread. So we were all asking, I know I was asking questions about how he got the gun off the roof, because you don't see the gun. Allegedly, he had disassembled it on the roof and thrown it into his backpack. But then they found the gun reassembled in the woods somewhere. Okay. So how do you disassemble the gun and then reassemble it and then put it in a drop-off location? So it was narrating the events that we all had questions about, things that weren't adding up. So there's fishiness going on, and we probably won't know all of the details. They're probably going to conceal a lot of this and not be transparent with the public about the assassination, who pulled the trigger, who he worked with. Hopefully we had to get at least those answers. And I don't know if he was working with anybody else, or if he was connected to a larger terrorist organization, Antifa, which has now been deemed a terrorist organization. I don't know who all he was working with, if he had acted completely alone. And if maybe the text, this was a way for Tyler Robinson to keep his lover out of it, and to, kind of show authorities, he had confessed, on this text message. And, in the text messages, he says, if I get my rifle, then that means all the evidence will have been collected and the FBI won't be on to me. And it's like, wait a second, you're like confessing, okay, to your lover right now via text message. That's evidence. So none of it really quite adds up. I think I've always held this position from the day it happened. I go, there's no way that a 22-year-old could pull off a high-profile political assassination like this all by himself, and nobody not know a damn thing about it except him, right? Whoever pulled the trigger, Tyler Robinson or somebody else. There's no way that I think he acted alone. And maybe the text messages reveal that he had tried to, is throw the FBI maybe off the scent, knowing that he'd be caught eventually, or that this would, sort of exonerate or keep his lover out of it, by saying, don't you remember was engraving the bullet casings. I think that was part of the text message thread. So that kind of ruins that, because like you saw your roommate engraving bullets and you didn't say anything to law enforcement. So I don't know. All of it's very fishy. I don't want to get into all of that today, but I do want to talk about the response, because that is something that we all know has happened. Thousands upon thousands, if not millions, of left-wing Americans have celebrated the death of Charlie Kirk. And you sure as hell don't get, both sides with this thing. I mean, there is no both sides. I have encouraged people listening to this show to provide me one example. She brought up Melissa Hortman. I've totally debunked that. Melissa Hortman, if anything, was killed by a left-winger. Okay. Paul Pelosi, if anything, was killed by a gay man. I'm not for certain, but it sure looks that way. Paul Pelosi answered the door in his underwear. I'm not sure if the guy who had put a hammer through his head was gay, but it sure as hell looks that way, right? And it sure as hell looks like Vance Bolter was a left-wing guy. So I encourage these people on my show, hey, please give me an example of somebody on the right going after somebody. I really just want one example, so that way I could somewhat understand the both sides argument, but it's really a lousy attempt. So President Donald Trump was within millimeters of being dead. And that was one assassination attempt. The other, he was within minutes of being dead. Had his schedule been, slightly adjusted, he would have been dead. And then we have the Kirk assassination. This is the first political assassination since 1968. And the fact of the matter is, this both sides argument not only doesn't fly, but we don't care, as Greg Gutfeld said. We don't care about this both sides argument. So I do want to get to Brandon Johnson. This is a fascinating X thread. Reporter William J. Kelly, or that Chicago reporter, as you might know him, I'm going to share with you his tweet. He said, Chicago mayor loses it after getting questioned about Charlie Kirk. So this is fascinating. He kind of walks you through his day in the life as the reporter pressing the mayor. So Johnson's communication director, Erin Connolly, sat next to me in a City Hall press room. She offered my condolences over Charlie Kirk's death because she had seen a recent interview I did with him on X. This is William J. Kelly. Most of the time she approaches me, it's to threaten me or scold me. Afterwards, Mayor's press secretary, Casio Mendoza, who routinely threatens and interrupts me, did the same. Later, Kennedy, F the pigs, Bartley. So Kennedy Bartley had come under fire for saying F the pigs at one point. Stopped me in the hallway to talk to me about Charlie. The mayor's top 3 staffers in one day. So these are top staffers of Mayor Brandon Johnson's. Their words are insincere. This is what William J. Kelly says on his X post. We know because of what they actually do. And it is unnerving coming from people who routinely threaten me and my free speech. And that was the intention. So it's just unnerving for them to come up and, offer condolences when they have treated William J. Kelly, and I had him on the show before, so poorly. But it's very clear that Johnson is nervous. It's very scripted, and his staff is desperate to control the messaging. Despite this, at the mic, he once again called President Donald Trump a threat to democracy. So much like Rashida Tlaib, Mayor Brandon Johnson is not changing his rhetoric and not keeping the temperatures down, toning down the rhetoric and cooling temperatures, So he goes, I pressed him on Charlie Kirk's murder. He denied his own political hate speech encourages violence. And when I pressed him on the murder of Irina Zarutska and the Chicago woman victimized by repeat offenders, he tried to stick to his crime is down script with me. But eventually he melted down, lashed out in a tirade about the evil of incarcerating Black people, of the incarceration of Black people. So let's take a listen to this. You guys ought to get a kick out of this. He melts down at one point here, so stay with it. I know it's a bit of a longer clip, but you won't want to miss the melt.
Jails and incarceration and law enforcement is a sickness that has not led to safe communities.
The pressure is getting to Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. First, let's see how he handles this question that smacks him around from William J. Kelly.
We've all seen the horrific video of Charlie Kirk being politically assassinated. In Chicago, we saw an ICE agent reportedly run over by an illegal alien. Many people tell me, real Chicagoans tell me, that it's your violent, racist hate speech that is causing people to commit these acts of violence. What do you say to the real Chicagoans who detest what they call the insipid, insidious, boneheaded hate speech that you engage in on a daily basis?
Well, first of all, I don't engage in hate speech. In fact, I think it's important that we note that, as I've said from the very beginning of this tragedy that occurred in our country, that political violence is not only abhorrent, but it undermines the sensibility of our democracy, and there's no place for political violence. In fact, violence as a whole is something that, as a country and as a nation, that we have to continue to come together to ensure that we eliminate all acts of violence. My prayers, of course, are still with Mrs. Kirk and the two children of Charlie Kirk. But again, we boldly and in very direct terms openly reject all acts of violence, and particularly political violence.
That kind of composure could only last so long. Let's move ahead to where he completely lost it.
I get so sick and tired of people believing that the only thing that Black and brown and poor people get to get in this city are badges. People want jobs. It's why we've increased the ability for young people to have jobs in this city. I get so sick and tired of people in this country and in this city that believes that the only thing that you can offer Black people and poor people is jails, incarceration, and police officers. Dr. King said this right here in Chicago, the National Conference on New Politics. What did he say? He said, militarism is a sickness. I am trying to eradicate the sickness from this city and from this country. Jails and incarceration and law enforcement is a sickness that has not led to safe communities. I'm going to work hard every single day to protect the people who are caught up in violence in this city. Guess why? You want to know why? Because the vast majority of them look like me. This president has never asked a very simple question to me. He doesn't talk to Black mayors about what it's like to live in communities that have been disinvested in. So no, we're not going to succumb to the sickness and the evil that Dr. King warned us about a generation ago. It's a sickness, and we're going to eradicate it.
Earlier, Johnson was asked about Irina Zarutska, the woman killed on the train in Charlotte.
We've all seen the horrific video of Irina Zarutska being stabbed in the neck on public transportation. In Chicago, we have countless examples of women being punched in the face, choked out, robbed, abused, murdered by violent repeat offenders. And your only legislation or in regards to public safety on public transportation is don't smoke cigarettes. Is there anything that you'd like to say to the women who have been abused by violent repeat offenders in the city of Chicago?
Well, first of all, my community safety plan is far more substantive than just asking people not to smoke. Our investments in community safety have been unprecedented, quite frankly, and public safety and community safety will always remain my top priority. There are way too many individuals, of course, that have been victimized by violence, and it, again, is my top priority to continue to make sure that we're investing in our detectives division as our detectives bureau coordinates and collaborates with our counterintelligence and all of our stakeholders come together to drive violence down the city of Chicago. Many of these acts, as you have described, are quite horrific. Any act of violence is one act too many. And I'm going to work hard every day to ensure that we build the safest, most affordable big city in America.
Okay, so that was reporter William J. Kelly. He was talking with Mayor Brandon Johnson, asking him several questions. A few things there. Mayor Brandon Johnson brought up jobs, and he was talking about the Black community, and he said that it's a sickness, law enforcement, and jails, that it's a sickness to have law enforcement in jails. Okay. And then he said, the Black community in Chicago needs more jobs. Well, JB and Brandon Johnson, they have been giving them jobs through the Peacekeeper Initiative, which brings me to today's story. JB was caught scrubbing a photo of him off of the internet, off of his website, of he and a Chicago peacekeeper who's now been charged with murder and robbery just last week. And I brought this story to you yesterday. This is Kellen McMiller. He was wanted by police in 4 states, but yet somehow when he was wanted by these 4 states, he was able to pose with Governor J.B. Pritzker in a photo op, and he was also able to obtain a job through the Peacekeepers Initiative. The Peacekeeper Initiative, I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars have gone into this. This is where ex-cons get jobs, and they get $200 a day to go out there and play guidance counselor with hardened criminals. Violent criminals and illegal aliens now make up the core of the Democrat Party base. Take a listen to this. This is the news report, and then I'll show you the photo of JB himself with the Peacekeeper. That has now been scrubbed, but I'm going to share it, and I encourage you to share the photo everywhere. Share it with your friends. Don't let it go away. Much like the photo with Dick Durbin, and I bring up violent criminals and illegal aliens who kill women. Gabriel Calixto. Gabriel Calixto was recently apprehended by the Trump administration, DHS. Gabriel Calixto was seen pictured with Dick Durbin a few years prior to him killing or kidnapping Katie O'Brien, in which he was convicted of that. Or Katie O'Brien was a kidnapping victim. He got it pled down to unlawful restraint, was out in a couple of years, and then later killed, allegedly, Emma Schaefer. Okay, so Dick Durbin was pictured with that guy. J.B. Pritzker is pictured with a murderer. You know, Democrats, their base are violent criminals and illegal aliens who commit heinous crimes like stabbing women. Okay, let's take a look. Here we go.
The reason this is getting so much traction is because the photo was of Governor Pritzker with a man now charged in connection to deadly Chicago crash on the Mag Mile. CWB Chicago first reported that 35-year-old Kellen McMiller, now accused of murder, posed for the photo earlier this month at an event highlighting peacekeepers who work in community violence prevention. Now, a spokesperson for Pritzker said they were troubled to learn of the allegations against McMiller, saying in part, quote, "The governor meets hundreds of people in communities every week and is often asked to take photos. We were extremely troubled to learn that this individual was arrested for his alleged involvement in this serious crime, and we expect them to be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law." And the spokesperson added that Pritzker did not know McMiller personally, says they took the photo down on the website after being notified that he was arrested. The man, McMiller, and several other men are accused of killing in the crash. As Mark Arceta, the 40-year-old, lived in Skokie, was on his way to work when the suspects in a smash and grab burglary crashed into him in a getaway car. His girlfriend gave birth to their son the day after he died. And tonight, it's not clear how McMiller, who reportedly had 4 outstanding warrants from multiple states, was able to participate in this event and pose with the governor. The reason this is
Okay. There you had it. I'm going to show you the picture now of Governor J.B. Pritzker, just so that way you know. This is the Chicago peacekeeper, Kellen McMiller, and Governor J.B. Pritzker. They posed for a photograph on September 5th of 2025. McMiller, at that point, was wanted by police in 4 other states for violent crimes. This is McMiller, and he was getting paid $200 a day. Look at the peacekeeper vest. Look at that. Hold on. Here we go. There it is, the yellow vest. You know, that yellow vest looks very, very familiar. In fact, I actually remember Oscar Montes, age 31, just a few years ago, wearing that same vest when he drug a man out of his car when he was supposed to be working as a peacekeeper, getting paid with taxpayer dollars. He drug a man out of his car, curb stomped him, broke his ribs, and he was left blind, half blind, and one of his eyes needed facial reconstruction surgery. An innocent person, innocent motorist, stopped at a red light. Oscar Montes. I was wondering where I saw that vest before. Oh yeah, that's right. Another peacekeeper. And this was a couple of years ago. And there are so many more peacekeepers or stories like this. This guy was pictured with JB September 5th, 2025. And he just now, last week, has been charged for murder and robbery. So there's JB with that guy. really quick, I want to share with you this photo. And I'll never let this go away. I bring this up all the time. Gabriel Calixto and Dick Durbin. Dick Durbin has not addressed, unlike Governor J.B. Pritzker, I will say this, at least J.B. Pritzker's office addressed the photo, and they're doing everything they can to scrub the photo off of the internet. And really, it's probably like, no, this got out. We've got to scrub it and make sure nobody sees that I was pictured with a murderer and somebody who at the time when I took the picture was 1x4. At this time, I'd have to look at the date of this thing. This was on Facebook. I'd have to go back and look at the date. I don't know if at this point he had been released. I don't think so. For the kidnapping charge. So he went to IDOC prison and served, was convicted for kidnapping Katie O'Brien. Katie O'Brien, told me that he had a noose, he had a knife, held a knife to her throat, threatened her life, and he was supposed to serve 6 years, only served 2, and then was released on unlawful restraint. This guy was an illegal immigrant, a DACA recipient, in which his DACA status was revoked shortly after being convicted of kidnapping, right? So he was in the country illegally, and he was supposed to be deported under the Biden administration, but somehow wasn't deported, obviously, because in 2023, he allegedly stabbed Emma Schaefer several times and killed her in Springfield. And here he is, Dick Durbin, with this illegal immigrant who is now facing allegations and charges for the death of Emma Schaefer, and finally was apprehended under the Trump administration in 2025 to answer for his crimes, his alleged crimes against Emma Schaefer. So I want to say this again loudly. Violent criminals and illegal alien criminals make up the base, make up the core of the Democrat Party. They are constantly at photo ops with these people. They are constantly at campaign events with these Democrats. Those are the types of people that the left has voting for them. Okay. The Charlie Kirk assassination, the guy who took credit, the old crazy guy that took credit for the assassination. He took credit for the assassination, I don't know, knowing full well that he had kiddie porn, probably in his basement, I guess. I don't know. I don't know why you would confess to a crime knowing that you're a criminal. But I would even go a step further. Violent criminals, kiddie porn, child rapists, illegal aliens, they are the base. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want to be caught dead voting for a Democrat, considering that this is their base. So I want to switch gears. We got to talk about Jimmy Fallon. Welcome to the Conservative Cat Show. Subscribe to the channel. I'm getting really heated. I'm like, those pictures really piss me off. Like JB with the violent criminal, and then you got Dick Durbin with the illegal alien. Like at this point, we need to acknowledge who the Democrat Party is and who's voting for these people. And I wouldn't want to be caught dead being friends with somebody who votes for JB or Dick Durbin, considering that they've got the endorsement of these violent people who kill people. Okay. Anyway, so Conservative Cat Show. This is a show. We have a Christian worldview, truth-based commentary, exposing corruption, whether it's local, national. We stick to our values, family first values. And I give you a healthy dose of satire as well to just keep the spirit alive. Be sure to subscribe right now. Hit the subscribe button. Now, friends, this is a topic that is going to scratch deeper than the surface, okay? The headline making waves is Jimmy Kimmel, late night comedian, late night comedy hour is officially suspended. Okay, so that's right. The smirking face of Hollywood's Democratic court jester. Okay. That's what he is. He's a court jester, has been benched. And predictably, the left is wailing. You know, they're crying and screaming like alley cats. Okay, that is what they're doing. And you'd think civilization had collapsed. Okay, you would think that because Jimmy Kimmel is no longer broadcasting his monologues about how Donald Trump's hair he's no longer monologuing about how he doesn't like Donald Trump's hair, you would think that the world has ended, and that civilization has collapsed, if you were just listening to the people on the left. The squealing has been deafening. CNN's Brian Stelter, you remember him. He's the guy who looks like a potato. Looks like a potato that learned to talk. And he's been crying about, free speech. And free speech itself has been hauled off in chains, and which is funny because Stelter spent a good chunk of his career demanding for Fox News to be stripped from the airwaves entirely. And I don't really care. People are saying that this is the Trump administration and that the government went after Jimmy Kimmel and that Trump went after Jimmy Kimmel. Not true. Okay. As I explained yesterday very clearly, the FCC, they have licenses. Okay. These are broadcaster, unlike CNN and Fox News. I don't really care so much if CNN goes out there. I mean, I do, because if you're straight up lying, that's not free speech and we need to cancel you or hold you accountable. Sure. Cancel you because lying has no place in society and we need to call out lies. But Fox News, CNN, they are cable. It's much different than CBS, NBC, some of these public broadcasters, okay? NPR. We know that some of them get taxpayer subsidies, but at the end of the day, they want to be FCC licensed, okay? You have to follow this rule. Okay, these broadcasters have to follow this rule, which is serve the public, the public at large. Okay, you don't get to go down these niche rabbit holes like Fox News. They've got a niche audience. These are conservatives, Republicans, people who vote Republicans. CNN, the Green Weenie cult, okay, is their niche audience. When you are a broadcaster and hold an FCC license, you have to be held to a higher standard and you have to serve the public at large. And when you're out there lying, like Jimmy Kimmel did, with no evidence whatsoever, he claimed that Tyler Robinson, or that the kid who shot Charlie Kirk, was a MAGA Republican or a part of the MAGA gang. Okay. That is a straight up lie. All evidence is contrary to that claim. And he has an obligation as somebody who is FCC licensed. His company, ABC, is FCC licensed. He has an obligation to serve the public at large. Okay, so for a while, the FCC has been sleepwalking and not holding these broadcasters accountable. And now we have an FCC chair, Brendan Carr, who is holding these broadcasters accountable and making them serve the public at large and not letting them lie. Otherwise, your FCC license is going to be revoked because the FCC license comes with all kinds of perks as well. Okay. So you have to follow the rules. If there are rules, you have to follow them. And that is the way the Trump administration has gone about his entire year in office. So almost a year in office. We're getting close to that, him being in the office for a year. The Trump administration has been very clear. If there are rules, you have to follow them. Okay. Nobody is above following the rules. So Brian Stelter, he demanded, for a good chunk of his career, he was demanding that Fox News be stripped from the airwaves. That is entirely different than demanding ABC not tell lies. Okay, that is cancel culture. That is hauling away free speech in chains. Take a listen to Brian Stelter here. This is him. Oh, I've got to try to get this clip. Hold on. I'm going to try to find this clip of Brian Stelter because it's good. It's a kind of a throwback, but it's a good throwback of Brian Stelter. I want to make sure you have it. I don't know. I thought I had the right clip. I'm going to have to find it later. Darn it. Why does this always happen to me? Brian Stelter, I mean, I'll sum up what he says. He says, that they should take Fox News off the airwaves, and he was demanding that they be stripped off the airwaves. And that is just complete and utter nonsense. Hold on. Okay, I'm going to take a quick break because I need to take a break anyway and grab a drink of water. I'm going to come back, get the Brian Stelter video for you. I'm going to take a 50-second break, And then we're going to cut through this hypocrisy. It is thick, but we are going to cut through it. So stick around. You're listening to Conservative Cat. Okay, well, I couldn't find it. This is annoying. But essentially what Brian Stelter says is that when you lie, that isn't free speech. Okay, so I don't know why it's not the same now, because really what ABC Jimmy Kimmel was doing was lying, and that's not free speech. Free speech, that's what Brian Stelter said. You don't have the right to lie. Which, I mean, me being a free speech absolutist, you can say offensive things. You can even freaking lie. Okay, that is free speech. Okay. But it wasn't the government necessarily coming in and canceling Jimmy Kimmel, okay, and taking away his show. This was ABC making a business decision, deciding that Jimmy Kimmel was a liability and that they couldn't hold their FCC license. So it would be like me, radio, they all have FCC licenses. It'd be like me going onto the radio and saying the F word. Okay, you can't do that. There's FCC rules that prohibit you from doing that. And I know people who have done that on the radio, who have slipped and said the F word and have been subsequently fired. Okay, that is what ABC did. This is essentially the same thing. Lying subjects you to being out of compliance with FCC regulations, which then makes you liable, okay, for fines. The FCC can fine you for not abiding by the rules. So this wasn't the government canceling Jimmy Kimmel. So that isn't an attack on free speech. I think that people think that like they have a very odd view of free speech and what it's supposed to look like or like what it is. And they think that private citizens, so this is, a private company. It isn't a government company, despite them being governmentally regulated. It isn't a complete government company, ABC. They do get subsidies, I'm sure. But like NPR and things, that is straight up a government media apparatus, okay? They get donations and things like that, but largely I would imagine that they're government media, okay? But ABC, private company fires Jimmy Kimmel for what he says. That is not attacking free speech. Free speech cannot be taken away by private citizens. That is just private citizens holding other private citizens accountable for their speech. What would be an attack on free speech is if Jimmy Kimmel were to be locked up. Okay. So, and I think that we've got to talk about Barack Obama here. Obama stuck his nose in this, the Jimmy Kimmel issue, and he never misses an opportunity to posture as some sort of philosopher king of our era. And he did it here. And he's whining about free expression, and he's complaining that silencing Kimmel sets a dangerous precedent. The government didn't do it, okay? ABC, the company, fired Jimmy Kimmel because he became a liability because he was out of FCC regulations. And it would be the same thing if I were to get on the radio and say the F word, my company firing me for that. That would be totally within their rights as a business owner. So much like, we can't demand, for example, the woman who wouldn't bake the cake for the gay couple, right? Because infringed on her religious liberties. This is a private company, a baker. We can't force her to comply and bake the cake for the gay couple if she doesn't want to. She is a business owner, has rights, and she has the right to say no. ABC has the right to say no to Jimmy Kimmel if they believe he is a liability to their business. Okay, so Obama is the guy who paved the road for, you know, this censorship, if that's what you want to call it. This wasn't even an example of censorship because this wasn't the government. Okay, now Pam Bondi has gotten out there and talked about implementing free speech laws, free speech legislation, or hate speech legislation. Hate speech is not a thing. She actually talked about filing lawsuits against Office Depot because there was an employee there who was subsequently fired who wouldn't print Charlie Kirk posters for a vigil, okay, which was totally within his rights. If he didn't want to print it, he didn't have to, right? But now the government's trying to come in, Pam Bondi, and I think that that's totally wrong. I have a video out there from this past week that discusses that. But if you want to call this censorship, which it isn't, and I think I've made my point clear, Obama's the guy who kind of paved the way for this. Okay, so even if the right wing, the Trump administration, started engaging in censorship of left-wing individuals, which is not what I am calling for. Even if they did, though, it would be somewhat justifiable because Obama and the left, they kind of built the road here for this path of censorship. So let's set the scene here. Kimmel's suspended. Colbert was actually canceled last month for the same sort of reasons, kind of. He was just very costly. And like I said, these broadcasters, they rely on the FCC licensure. They kind of rely on government subsidies. They only exist because we, the taxpayers, allow them to exist. Okay, outside of that, they don't have the ratings. They probably wouldn't exist if they didn't have the FCC licensure and some of these subsidies, okay? So he got canceled last month, Stephen Colbert, and the media then was crying censorship, tyranny, blah, blah, blah. And really what it was Stephen Colbert's company said, you're too expensive to keep on. You're not, yielding any kind of revenue that justifies us paying you $50 million. So we have to can you. Okay, so that is not censorship. That is not tyranny. That is a private company making a decision that best suits their business model. Okay, much like the Kimmel situation. So do you notice a pattern when conservatives face deplatforming? I have faced it. Everyday Americans, they would lose their jobs for posting a Bible verse. I know of a pastor who was a chaplain, who was hired on as chaplain, and he was fired for publishing a Bible verse in a pamphlet and passing it out to residents at a nursing home or whatever. Okay, so I know of Americans who lose their jobs for posting a Bible verse, who have gotten sued out of existence, really, for declining to participate in same-sex weddings. The left calls that accountability. Okay, but the moment their clowns and court jesters get a taste of their own medicine, suddenly it's the end of the First Amendment, and the First Amendment is being hauled away in chains. Cancel culture, my friends, didn't appear out of thin air. Okay. It was weaponized and industrialized during the Obama years. That is what has happened. So, they deplatformed us. We lost our jobs for posting a Bible verse, or for not masking, or for not vaxxing, or whatever. They sued those bakers out of existence, essentially for declining to participate in same-sex gay weddings. So, my friends, this didn't appear out of thin air. It all started really under the Obama years. So, for Obama to come out and start commenting on the Jimmy Kimmel thing, totally tone deaf. He made censorship fashionable. Barack Obama did. And Hollywood applauded the censorship. The press cheered for the censorship. Universities turned it into doctrine. And now When the monster they created turns and bites them, they scream for help. So I want to take us a walk through history, if you will. So come close, listen up. Do you remember when the press corps during the Trump years kept claiming that they were under siege? And, Jim Acosta, remember him? He turned every press conference into a Broadway audition, clutching his pearls and claiming, "Oh, Trump, he's pointing the finger at the journalist, and this is violence against journalism, and we're under siege, the press." But here's the inconvenient truth. During Obama's presidency, okay, now that was during the Trump years in the first term, okay, he would say, "Fake news, you're fake news." I remember going to a Trump rally and it was so funny, and he goes, "I see them all back there, they're all the fake news." The inconvenient truth here is that during the Obama presidency, reporters weren't just insulted, and that's all that Trump did. All he did was exercise his free speech and call them fake news media, and he insulted them, and sometimes he insulted reporters. Obama went beyond that. Okay, what Obama did was actual censorship, government censorship. Obama spied on, prosecuted, and dragged reporters into court. Okay, the press into court. So let's look at James Rawson. He was Fox News, James Rawson. The Obama Department of Justice didn't just criticize his reporting, which is largely what President Donald Trump does. He says the fake news media. He seized their phone records. Okay, Obama did. They spied on his emails. They even grabbed the phone records of James Rosen's parents. Okay, imagine that. Your mom and dad are being drugged into surveillance because you dared to challenge the scandal-free president and Barack Obama. You dared to challenge him. So this guy, I would say, probably knows a thing or two about free speech being drug off in cuffs or in chains. So that's not an isolated case. James Rawson, look this up, Google it. You can fact check me all day. That wasn't an isolated case. The Associated Press itself reported that the Obama Justice Department secretly scooped up phone records from its reporters across Washington, New York, and Hartford. The AP president called it, quote, "a massive and unprecedented intrusion. Massive and unprecedented." Those are not the words of conservatives who are critical and were critical of Obama under his administration, under his rule, under his reign. Those weren't conservatives who were saying that. That came from the Associated Press president himself, who said that this was massive and an unprecedented intrusion. And yet, where was the outrage? Where was, the Barack Obama then, where were they? I'll tell you where they were. They were too busy laughing it up, drinking, writing jokes for, White House Correspondents' Dinner. They were too busy swooning over this guy, over Barack Obama, to call out the true government censorship. Okay. And what was going on with Jimmy Kimmel and him being outside of FCC regulations, it wasn't the government who fired him. It was ABC, because he became a liability. They didn't want to get fined by I'm sure by the FCC, ABC. And he just outright lied. And also it was distasteful to make fun of Charlie Kirk's death. And I mean, not only that, but it was lying, which is a liability for ABC, being that they are broadcasters. That's not cable news. Okay. Unlike Fox News and CNN, they are held to a different standard because they hold FCC licenses. Okay. So I want to continue our walk through history here with Barack Obama, because this guy comes out and says that the thing with Jimmy Kimmel was government censorship or whatever, and that it sets a dangerous precedent. Yeah, give me a break, Brock, Barry. So he didn't stop at just spying on reporters like James Rawson at Fox News, okay, or the Associated Press. He didn't stop there. He dug deeper. Okay, he pulled out a World War I law, the Espionage Act of 1917. This law was written to prosecute spies working against the United States. Okay, he twisted it into a weapon to go after whistleblowers. So he prosecuted more people under the Espionage Act for leaking to the press. So people within his administration would leak to the press. And he used the Espionage Act to go after those people who would leak to the press. Okay. And he used it far more than any other previous president and all of the previous presidents before him combined. So that's every president: Woodrow Wilson, Roosevelt, Truman, Eisenhower, Nixon, Reagan, Bush, Clinton. All of them put together did not match Barack Obama's record of prosecuting whistleblowers using the Espionage Act. And in fact, I mean, this was just twisted. Most presidents did not use the Espionage. Like the intent of the Espionage Act was not to go after members of your own administration for leaking things to the press. Okay. So yet the press, they worshipped Barack. They worshipped him as a great defender of democracy. The man who got the Transparency in Government Award, you guys remember that? Guess what? The irony behind that was that nobody was invited. The press wasn't allowed to come when he was getting his Transparency in Government Award. You can't make this up. The irony writes itself. He actually received the award behind closed doors, Barack Obama. And this is the same guy that complains about comedians being suspended or fired. This was a decision of a private company, ABC. He opened the door. He built the machinery. He greased the wheels of censorship. And now he's shocked that someone else uses the tools he left lying around. And I don't even think that it reaches to that level, okay? Because, again, this wasn't the Trump administration who went after ABC. This was ABC making a decision about Jimmy Kimmel after he lied on a broadcast. And they are FCC licensed and they are supposed to serve the public, okay, as broadcasters. That is why we have things like the FCC regulations. If you don't want to do that, go be a cable news outlet, go be a streamer on YouTube, right? If you don't want to abide by the rules of the FCC. Okay, so let's pause here and ask the real question. Why does this matter for Christians, conservatives, and liberty-loving Americans? Because freedom of speech is not just a political point. Okay, this isn't just a political principle or something in the Constitution. This is biblical. Okay, when they created the Constitution, it was known that they had the Bible opened up right next to them as they were writing. Okay, so God gave us voices to proclaim truth. The entire Bible is about free speech, folks. I mean, the prophets of old weren't silenced even when the kings and the emperors tried. From Daniel in Babylon to John the Baptist crying out in the wilderness, God's people spoke truth to power, even when it was unpopular, even when it was dangerous. And today, cancel culture is nothing more than modern day Herod, okay, trying to cut the heads off of those who spoke inconvenient truths. So Barack Obama, Jimmy Kimmel, Brian Stelter, Stephen Colbert, they all played along when the sword was pointed at conservatives and at Christians and at truth tellers. Now that the blade is dangling over their own heads, they want sympathy. You won't get it from me. Okay. And, you know, maybe you should have stood for principle when it mattered. Okay. So think about it. The same people who demanded bakers be fined into bankruptcy for living out their faith and not baking a cake for the gay marriage are now screaming free speech when their clown loses a TV slot. And the same president who spied on journalists, prosecuted them, is now warning against government intrusion. Okay. The same Stelter who wanted Fox News off the air is now crying for Jimmy Kimmel. The hypocrisy is stacked upon hypocrisy. And really what it is, it's not hypocrisy. I've been saying this for years. It's hierarchy. Rules for thee, but not for me. And here's the kicker. cancel culture only has power if we bow to it. Okay, just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in Daniel 3. When everyone bowed to the golden idol, 3 men stood tall. They refused to kneel, and God honored them for it. As conservatives, as Christians, as Americans, we have to stand firm, and we have to refuse to participate in this nonsense. And by participate in this nonsense, I mean Pam Bondi shouldn't go out there and draft hate speech laws. I am all for getting these leftists fired at their jobs. Okay, they did it to us. Really, that is not against free speech. Okay, it is this culture of canceling, and I'm not really against that at this point, because they paved the road, they built the machinery, they greased the wheels for this. Now you have to deal with the consequences. Okay, when we pick up the tools and we use it against you, you can't say a damn thing. Okay, we have to demand, refuse to bend the knee to censorship, government censorship. We still should stand on that. Okay, I am not calling for Donald Trump to go after reporters and prosecute reporters. Okay, I'm not calling for him to do that like Barack Obama did. Okay, because that's a step too far. Not calling for Pam Bondi to draft up hate speech laws and to go after leftists using prosecution and using the force of the government. Okay, but we as conservatives have to use the tools that the left has left behind against them. Okay, we have to defeat them. Okay, so the big takeaway, Jimmy Kimmel, this suspension is not really about him. He's just the latest clown to be kind of caught up in the machinery of the monster that his side built. Okay, we have to remember that. The machine of cancel culture was built by the left. That isn't really even, the big story here. It's not really all about him. The real story here is the hypocrisy of Barack Obama and the dishonesty of the press and the danger of cancel culture as a whole. But we should not, now that the machine has built, we should not bend the knee. Okay, we have to use the tools against them. And Barack Obama, he paved this road. He made cancel culture a thing. He actually made censorship a thing, government censorship a thing. Biden did the same thing by working with companies and at the behest of the Biden administration. Big tech like Facebook censored you, government censorship. Now, I'm not calling for us to do that or use the Espionage Act like Barack Obama did to hammer against his dissent. I'm not calling for Donald Trump to do any of that. I'm not calling for Donald Trump to spy on reporters and use the government to spy on reporters and to obtain phone records of the press. I'm not calling for any of that. What I am calling is for conservatives, the private citizenry, to hold these people accountable and to cancel them because they canceled you. Okay, and it's only fair. So here's the truth. If you built the guillotine, don't be surprised when the blade falls down on your own neck. Okay, so friends, thank you for listening to that segment of the show. And remember, our vision is very clear: to live in a Christian worldview, to speak truth even when it's dangerous, and to put family first and defend liberty. And yes, laugh at the absurdity of the world when it demands we bow to its idols. But we can't let the Obamas, the Stelters, and the Kimmels tell us what free speech is, because these people forfeited their credibility years ago, and they don't even know what free speech is. Actually, I do think they know what it is. They go just beyond cancel culture and accountability culture is what I'm calling it now. They go beyond that, and they actually use and weaponize the government for government censorship. Now, I have to take a quick break, but we're going to come back. I want to talk about this fence in Rockford. There was a fence that was built around this courthouse. Eric Schwarzenegger and Tammy Duckworth and Dick Durbin have been talking about this fence that the feds had put up So I'm going to be right back. Smash that like button. I was fired in 2020 for questioning BLM. Well, I am sorry for that. Roman, my suggestion to you is to actually look at the TPUSA database. They're actually creating a database now with names and employers of people, and go find people to add to that database. Okay. And this database, hiring our business owners, if you're a business owner, you can look up this database and you can find out the people who said nasty things and what exactly they said about Charlie Kirk following the assassination. So we have to put them on a list. They put us on lists. They called our employers. We have to get them fired. So I would keep a watch on your social media, find people who are saying nasty things about Charlie Kirk, contact their employer, and really pressure the employer to fire them. And really, it's your moral obligation, because when they were going after conservatives and getting them fired, really what they wanted to do was destroy our livelihood, make it to where we weren't going to be financially stable, where we couldn't put food in our children's mouth, because that's how evil they are. We're not doing that. What we're trying to do is keep that Democrat from donating $75 to Zohran Mamdani, the communist in New York, a donation to him, or we're keeping leftists from buying their stuffed animals to put in their car dash, in their car windshields. That's the worst that will happen to these people. And I don't want to go after them because I want to see them not succeed. I want to go after them because I want to hold them accountable for what they say. And I want to end the death culture, because that's really what they're pushing out there, is this death culture that we celebrate death. And no, I say we should celebrate life. So yeah, my suggestion would be to find people, get them fired, and participate in this accountability culture, because guess what? Barack Obama, Brian Stelter, these leftists, they've paved the road, they built the machinery, and now we've got to pick up the tools and use it against them. And I would say that we wouldn't go as far as them, and that Barack Obama, he prosecuted people, he went after reporters, he obtained their phone records, spied on them, he used the Espionage Act to go after whistleblowers who leaked things to the press. I wouldn't say go as far as the Biden administration, where we contact private companies and at the behest of the government, censor people online. I'm not calling for President Donald Trump or Pam Bondi to do that kind of stuff. Okay. But we as private citizens can absolutely shut down leftists in the industry, because we have to take power back, and we have to be a powerful force in all of these institutions and industries. I'm talking medicine, I'm talking education, law. We have to take these institutions back, because they have taken them over and they have gotten you fired from these places. And we need to take the insurance industry back. There needs to be Christians, conservatives that flood the zone in these institutions, and we need to take the power back. And the way we do that is by getting them fired, saying no to death culture, saying no to the celebration of political assassinations. And we do that as private citizens. Okay. That is not anti-free speech. That is actually free speech on top of free speech. What Barack Obama did was anti-free speech. What Pam Bondi has suggested she might do is anti-free speech, crafting hate speech laws, okay, and going after people for not posting pictures of Charlie Kirk on poster board at Office Depot and launching prosecuting them for that. That is anti-free speech. What was going on with Jimmy Kimmel and a private company saying, no, we're not going to keep you on your liability because you lied, that is not anti-free speech. Okay. That is a private company making a decision about an employee of theirs. Totally free speech. All within the bounds here of free speech. So, all right, smash that like button, share this out with your friends. We're going to be right back. I'm going to come back and talk about this little fence that was in Rockford. I'll be right back. Hey, you're listening to the Conservative Cat Clips. This is the place where we don't call 911 first. Nope, we pray, we prepare, and yes, we pack heat. Every time there's a tragedy, the media and the Democrats, they start crying, do something, and do something. And what they mean is more laws, more bans, and more restrictions, not on criminals, mind you, but on law-abiding citizens. So let me tell you what evil doesn't care about. They don't care about legislation. The man willing to break the sixth commandment, thou shalt not murder, doesn't blink twice at your AR-15 ban. Okay, he doesn't read your gun-free zone signs. He sees those signs and he says, this is an invitation for me. Gun control doesn't stop evil. It disarms good people. The founding fathers didn't give us the Second Amendment so we could go hunting. They gave us the Second Amendment to protect ourselves against tyrants, both foreign and domestic. And newsflash, tyrants don't tend to announce themselves. They come wearing smiles and waving around fancy policies. And I also want to talk about self-defense today. Self-defense. The average police response time in big cities like Chicago could be up to 10 minutes, sometimes even longer. I know the Chicago PD is really struggling with that. Response times in rural areas, it could get up to even 30 minutes response time. So if somebody kicks down your door, are you going to ask them to wait until the government sends backup to protect you, or are you going to protect your family and take matters into your own hands? So grandma, in Peoria, Illinois, she is just trying to defend her property, but yet she's the one treated like a criminal. She has to go through all kinds of crazy background checks, permits, training. And the thug in Chicago, he gets the gun out of his trunk in an alley, and he didn't think twice about our laws, okay? It's about power. It always has been. Every dictatorship in history has disarmed their citizens first. First, that's Stalin, that's Hitler, that's Mao. They didn't want competition. And once the guns were gone, so were the rights, the freedom, and the people. So a disarmed people is a controlled people. But an armed, faithful, and free people, that is a nightmare for tyrants. And really, it's a blessing to your neighbors if you are armed. The Second Amendment isn't outdated. It's eternal. And just like evil, just like our right, just like the evil has the right to do evil things, and that they will, we have the right to resist evil and to arm ourselves. And the Second Amendment is pretty dang clear, shall not be infringed. This has been Conservative Cat Clips. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends, and be sure to subscribe. Hit that subscribe button right now. Tell one person that you know to subscribe to Cat today. Hey, today we are taking a closer look at this fence that went up around this courthouse. It's made some buzz on social media, so I wanted to address it today. Some are calling the fence unnecessary. Others say that, it's an overreach. And here's the reality. The fence today is going to probably stop a riot tomorrow. And being that the country is very divided right now, and that the left has shown us they will stop at nothing until we are all dead. I truly believe that. We've seen violent mobs. We've seen violence just run amok in our inner cities. We watched Portland. We've watched Seattle burn. And after seeing all of this, we'd be fools to not put up a fence around the federal courthouse in Rockford. And we'd be fools to think that Rockford is immune to the violence that comes from the left. So let's lay out the facts here. There was a temporary fence that went up around the Stanley J. Rakowski federal courthouse. Now, Congressman Eric Sorensen has been kind of throwing a fit. He's been claiming that the Trump administration hasn't been transparent. And he said that he called the mayor of Rockford and he called all of his, alderman buddies in local politics, none of whom, by the way, have control of the federal courthouse. Okay. Meanwhile, you've got State Representative John Capello. He works at the sheriff's office in Winnebago, which is there in Rockford. He's a Republican. He's a guy who's worn the uniform, and he kind of gets, a cost-saving precaution. I think he kind of gets this, and he calls it straight up what it is. He goes, the fence is a cost-saving precaution against potential unrest. And let's face it, the country is in unrest. I mean, the left is unruly. There's no way we can truly know what they'll do next. Okay, which is why the fence has probably gone up. In other words, you know, it's going to cost a fortune to repair the courthouse if it's vandalized for some odd reason, or if there's potential unrest. It's going to cost a fortune later if we don't take precautionary cost-saving measures now. Okay, so we need to stop pretending that fences are some kind of sinister symbol. I want to play this clip here for you. They're not. They're tools. They're protection. And in this case, I think it's pretty much common sense. Think about it. We put up fences around schools. We put up fences around playgrounds. We put up fences around our homes. Are we imprisoning our kids? Are we, treating everybody like criminals just because we put up a fence in our yard? No. We're protecting them from people on the outside, potential wolves on the outside. Okay, that doesn't mean that everybody's a wolf on the outside. It just means that we are putting up the fence to protect our kids from the wolves who might be potentially outside. So I want to play this clip. Take a listen to this. Here we go. This is Eric Sorensen making a big mountain out of a molehill. Like, really, this is what I think this story is. But take a look.
Hi there, everyone. It's Congressman Eric Sorensen. I wanted to talk with you about the situation unfolding in Rockford and what we know. The Trump administration is not being forthcoming concerning the ramp up of security around the federal building this weekend. Today, I've been in close contact with Mayor McNamara, with Alderman Bell, with other city leaders, state and federal leaders, to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to protect the people of my hometown of Rockford, Illinois. My office is also leading a letter to Homeland Secretary Kristi Noem, asking specific questions about the precise nature, the cost, the time these fences went up, but most importantly, she needs to answer what purpose. I have also been in communication with our congressional delegation in the state of Illinois concerning a ramp up of federal law enforcement at Great Lakes Naval Base in North Chicago and in the city of Chicago. Let me say as clearly as I can, the president has no authority to intimidate or to threaten the citizens of the United States. And this goes way beyond my work as a member of Congress. This is not about politics. We all must make sure that our neighbors are protected and that we are served by the government, not threatened and put into custody by it. But I also want to make sure that our message is clear. We have to remain peaceful in our opposition. Speak up, be loud, get others involved. Talk about our values publicly, and whether they're in your community, your church, your family, do that. But as we demand answers, know that I will share them with you as I get them. Because this action cannot be tolerated. And I stand with you and every other person in the state of Illinois. Thank you.
So the left is mad about the fence, and I don't know where he's at. It kind of looks like a shower, right? I don't know. Like in the back here, I was thinking to myself, and it sounds like he's in a shower, but I don't know. Maybe that's a desk over there in the left-hand corner. But originally, I was like, where is he broadcasting? Like, where is he at? Is he in the shower? But the left is big mad about this fence, and it's so silly. Like, fences are, we use them in our schools or around our playgrounds. We put a fence around our house. Okay. God himself gave Israel walls. Nehemiah rebuilt the wall of Jerusalem as an act of restoration, not oppression. Okay. So I don't know why they're pissed about the fence. Because really we have a culture. Hey, we put doors on our houses. We put fences around our yard. It's called privacy. It's called safety. It's keeping the wolves on the outside. This was a safety measure for the people who are going into the courthouse, trying to do their business, right? And potential unrest because, I don't know, these deranged people think that deportations are happening at this courthouse, which they're actually not, I don't think. I don't know. They go up to these ICE detention facilities, vandalize them. So the left is mad about the fence, and they're asking, why do we need the fence? Well, because we live in a culture where mobs think that they can smash windows, torch police cars, and storm government buildings when they don't like a ruling. Before you go into January 6th, January 6th would not have happened had not the Capitol Police engaged first the J6 protesters. That was a rally, and they stormed the building because they were engaged first, and I think that there were Antifa members there who rallied up the crowd and riled up the crowd, rabble-rousers who got people to go in. This is just from what I hear that from people that were on the ground that day, that the Capitol Police actually engaged first. They were on the defensive, the J6ers, and for some odd reason, they were portrayed in the American media as the offense. They weren't on the offensive, they were on the defense. And the fence is actually just a symptom here. The sickness of lawlessness, and the fence is a symptom of that sickness. And instead of addressing lawlessness and the unrest and the mob rule and all of that, Sorensen would rather grandstand about transparency and about the cost of the fence. I'll tell you what transparency looks like. Broken glass, boarded up windows, taxpayers left holding the bill. So that is what, transparency looks like. We saw it in Portland. We saw it in Seattle. We even saw it in DC at the Capitol and J6. Taxpayers have to pay for the damage, right? We have to recognize that there is this mob mentality, this lawlessness mentality, and this sickness that has plagued places like Rockford, places like Chicago. And prevention is always cheaper than destruction. Okay, so you're calling for the cost of what this fencing is. And, I don't care really if it costs thousands of dollars, to be honest, because riots and potential vandalism to the courthouse, if the left in their deranged mind thinks that somebody's being deported out of the courthouse or whatever, if they think ICE agents are there, the riots could cost millions. So even if the fence costs thousands upon thousands of dollars, I think that ultimately that's a preventative cost-saving measure. So that way we don't have to pay millions later for when the riots happen at this courthouse. So Sorensen, he's a rookie congressman, and he thinks that the solution is to ask questions and to call the mayor of Rockford and to call the local officials there. This is a federal courthouse. He did write a letter to DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, and I'm not totally against him asking questions about the fence. He is a congressman. This is kind of within his jurisdiction. This is a federal courthouse. If he has questions, just go call Kristi Noem. There's no reason to grandstand, write a letter, talk to somebody at the DHS about it. Talk to freaking hell. The U.S. Marshal Service, they're the ones on the ground there at the federal courthouse. Ask them why the fence went up. They'll tell you it's just to protect the people who are coming in and out of the courthouse. John Cabello, he's worn a badge. He gets it. He understands threats. Okay, this is why he says that, hey, putting up the fence is going to work. It's a cost-saving precaution. So you can kind of see the differences between these two Illinois lawmakers. The way they approach this fence. Sorensen, he doesn't want to look at the culture of lawlessness that has plagued cities like Rockford. He doesn't want to look at that. Instead, he wants to grandstand and write letters to Kristi Noem and say that the Trump administration isn't being transparent. Here's the thing. The left loves fences when they protect them. They put up fences around the Democratic National Convention. They put up fences, I'm sure, around their own homes, around their fundraisers. And, the moment conservatives suggest fences or border walls or anything like that, suddenly it's immoral. Suddenly it's adversarial. Suddenly walls don't work. Fences are used to intimidate the people of Rockford. And really, the hypocrisy is just staggering. Congressman Swanson here, he says, "Oh, I called the mayor." I mean, who are you going to call next? The Rockford barista? Okay, they're not going to know about the fence. Okay, I mean, good for you for writing the letter to Kristi Noem, but if you really wanted to know about it, and if you truly want answers and transparency, then just go talk to the people, talk to the U.S. Marshal Service who actually deals with it, right? You're just grandstanding, and democracy isn't under attack because a temporary fence went up around a courthouse, okay? The courthouse was potentially under threat and under attack, and that's why the fence went up. The fence is there so that the judges, clerks, jurors, and yes, the very citizens that go there for representation to do their business, they can walk out safely. Okay, walk in and walk out safely. So the Bible teaches us that boundaries are a blessing, and that they don't diminish liberty. Actually, in Romans 13, they say rulers are to be a terror to bad conduct, and that includes rioters. It includes those who think smashing a courthouse door is a political statement. So what we have to do is be a terror to bad conduct, and just putting up this fence is telling these evildoers and these people who commit bad acts, hey, not here, so this isn't tyranny. Putting up a fence is not tyranny. Tyranny is when government hides behind the fences from its people and crushes their rights. Okay, so they're not hiding behind the fence. They're putting up the fence so that way the taxpayers don't have to pay a ton of money in damages if there were riot or mob rule or whatever. So yeah, that's that story. I mean, at the end of the day, the fence in Rockford isn't the enemy. Violence is the enemy. Disorder is the enemy. Chaos is the enemy. And God gave us walls. God gave us gates. And sometimes we've got to use walls, gates, and fences to say no. Sometimes we've got to use jail bars to say no, you can't go participate in society because you're a danger to yourself or others. Fences are stewardship. They are government finally for once taking a proactive measure instead of reacting too late. So they're crying about the fence, and Sorensen, really what he should be asking is, how do we stop the violence that makes the fences so necessary? That is the real question he has to ask himself. Then he has to ask himself, where is this violence coming from? And I'm sure he would answer the right. But truly, he needs to take a deep look who's causing most of the vandalism and the destruction, the BLM riots, the 2020 BLM riots. He's got to take a look at those. He's got to take a look at the ICE detention centers being vandalized, the courthouse is being vandalized because the left is saying F ICE, and they're going and they're smashing windows at these courthouses and these detention centers. He's got to take a hard look at his base and say, hey, how do I get them to stop the violence that makes these fences so necessary? All right, smash that like button, share this out with your friends, subscribe to the channel. Bye-bye. I love you. We'll be back tomorrow morning, bright and early, 6 a.m. Actually, no, today's Friday. Man, this week went by so fast. Happy Friday to you. We'll be back on Monday, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. It's a daily show, Monday through Friday. But bye-bye, be blessed, and I'll talk to you soon.